My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of 28 Days Later. And this will be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, then come back and watch my review because I will be going in depth. But this was one of the very first zombie movies I ever watched, and I remember I absolutely loved it when I first did. It felt like a new, fresh movie, and I just remember really liking that last act. So, watching this movie for the first time in a long time, I was really excited to, and I have to say, it didn't live up to what I remember of this movie. Now, that being said, it's still a decent movie. There's still plenty I like about it, but it didn't get to that greatness that I so desperately wanted from it. But let's begin with the absolute best quality of this movie, and it's John Murphy's score. John Murphy is one of those composers that deserves way more recognition than he gets because he is one of the best. He doesn't do a lot of scores, but when he does, boy, does it deliver, and that's definitely the case here. There are so many scenes in this movie that are elevated by his great score, and it can't be unsaid. I do like lots of what this movie is doing, mainly in its portrayal of these characters. Cillian Murphy's character wakes up 28 days after the apocalypse, and I think it's an obvious metaphor for childhood and innocence. He's a newborn in this post-apocalypse world, while Naomie Harris's character has lived through the pain and the chaos of the world, so she's grown jaded. Cillian is more subjective and he's open to helping people, while Naomie is more objective and understands what needs to be done to survive. This is shown clearly when Naomie brutally murders Mark after he gets bitten without any bit of hesitation. Cillian is clearly distraught by this, but she's clearly in the right, and I do think that's a really effective moment because I just had that sense that Mark would be one of the main characters, and nope, and just like that, Naomie was willing to kill him off. Just like that. Really effective. But as the story progresses, she does become more and more subjective. She does learn to open herself up and shows how she's able to enjoy things in life, when she was clearly not shown to be able to do so beforehand. It's only in the last act of the movie that Cillian becomes more like how she was at the start. It's only when he wants to save Naomie Harris's character and the character named Hannah. He becomes fueled by emotion to become like Naomie Harris's character. It's his love and him caring for other people that finally broke him and allowed him to fight for survival in this world. Because up until that point, he hasn't really partaked in many violent interactions. He tries to stay away from that. But their lives in danger is what pushed him to do so. It kind of shows how you need a mix of both personality types. Cillian is more subjective, he cares for others. Naomie is jaded and willing to do what it takes to survive. And you can combine the two and you've got someone motivated by love, willing to do anything it takes to protect them. And that's what's needed in this world to survive. You also got the father, who I think represents the nurturing that's needed for humans to survive. You must be slow and patient. The military, I believe, represents the worst of humanity, and the daughter, Hannah, represents hope. And of course, you also got the whole man is the real monster angle that works really well here. The evil military men added much bigger stakes and tension to the last act. The monsters don't impact the characters as much. It's the men that do. And you really gain a sense of that in the very first scene where we just see all these different news broadcasts of just terrible things happening in the world, and it just shows you how awful humanity can be. So it is a very human story of trying to survive in a chaotic world, and I think at that it does a good job. The performances by Cillian Murphy, Naomie Harris, Brendan Gleeson, and Christopher Eccleston are pretty good. I wouldn't say they're great performances, but they're good for what this movie needed. And I don't want to be mean, but Megan Barnes plays Hannah, and I do think she was really bad in this movie. She sticks out like a sore thumb. And this movie is directed by Danny Boyle, who brings some necessary chaotic energy here. But I also think that's where my biggest problem of this movie comes from. I think the chaotic energy works in some moments, but more often than not, it doesn't work at all and it takes away from the movie. Like, some moments are just too chaotic to the point where you can't tell what's happening. Like when Cillian Murphy is escaping the church and he's getting chased by a zombie, and then he's chasing Naomi Harris's character and Mark, and I just couldn't tell what was happening. I'm just like, do we really need this right now? It can be used sparingly and effectively, but he uses it as a crutch more often. And I remember the last act being a lot better than it was, and I like the ideas of what's going on. I like the musical score by John Murphy. But man, trying to figure out what's happening was a bit more difficult than I remember. Like, this scene is Cillian Murphy's character arc coming together. But you're just left like, huh? What's happening? Where is he? What's he doing? So he's back there, then he leaves, and then he comes back. And for such an essential moment, it should have stayed focused on him, and it should have been all the more effective. But the execution of that moment was beyond messy. And that really disappointed me. If this movie had well-shot action scenes with lots of tension and you could tell what's going on, I think that would make this into a great movie, because that's what this movie so desperately needed, was maybe 2 scenes of chaotic energy. But we didn't get that. I do think one other angle that holds this movie back from greatness is that I like the idea of Cillian Murphy's and Naomi Harris's relationship, but it doesn't have the impact it so desperately needed. I don't buy into the relationship between these 2 leads. In just none of the scenes where the characters are bonding did I actually buy that these characters were bonding. At no point did I believe that Hannah actually started to care for Cillian Murphy's character and Naomi Harris's character. And I just wish the character work was a bit stronger, especially in the relationships among them. In the scene where Brendan Gleeson's character dies just lacked any impact. It just comes out of nowhere, and then it turns out the army was hiding in the grass or something, and then they come in and they end up killing him. And it could have been a really effective moment, especially if someone like Naomi Harris's character had to kill him. That would have made it a very powerful, impactful moment. But any impact that moment could have was robbed of it. Look, I know it sounds like I hate this movie, but I really don't. I do think there's some really good qualities to it. I do like lots of the character work. It is an entertaining movie. But while you're watching it, you can see the potential for a great movie, and just some of the decisions made, both directing-wise and story-wise, really hold it back from the greatness it could have been. So I'm going to go ahead and give 28 Days Later a 6 out of 10. John Murphy's score is so damn good. But what do you think of 28 Days Later? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin out.